The moment I saw the embossed notary seal on the second mortgage agreement, the world didn't spin or shatter. It simply went quiet, like a massive engine grinding to a halt, leaving behind only the chilling silence of absolute zero. I wasn't looking at a piece of paper, I was looking at the precise, itemized cost of my decade-long delusion. Marcus hadn't just dipped into our savings or run up a credit card. He had secretly leveraged the one thing I held sacred, my entire inheritance, tied up in the equity of our family home, for a venture he hadn't once mentioned, a risky, ill-advised investment in a failing real estate trust on the other side of the country. And the signature that was supposed to be mine? A near-perfect forgery, meticulous in its deceit, confirming that this wasn't an act of desperation, it was a premeditated execution of trust. My hands, usually so steady from years spent drafting architectural plans, trembled only slightly, not from shock, but from the realization of how deep I had been buried. He hadn't just betrayed me in the bedroom, which would have been painful but perhaps forgivable, he had systematically demolished the financial foundation of our future, viewing me not as his partner, but as a silent, useful asset to be milked until dry. The document was dated 6 months prior, during a time when he was constantly talking about how we needed to trust each other completely if we were going to weather the market fluctuations. He was laying the groundwork for the lie while simultaneously signing away our security. In that dead silence, I didn't feel rage. I felt a profound, exhausting certainty: the man I married was never real, and the ghost that remained was a predator. Our life had always been curated for admiration. We were the couple at the neighborhood association meetings who finished each other's sentences, the duo whose joint success felt almost aspirational. Marcus, with his impeccable suits and easy charm, was the perfect complement to my quiet, focused ambition. He handled the big picture, finances, the investments, the legal framework, insisting that my creative brain shouldn't be bogged down with boring numbers. He'd frame it beautifully: "You focus on designing the masterpieces, darling, I'll focus on building the empire around you." And I, foolishly, believed him. I handed over control not out of laziness, but out of absolute, unquestioning love and respect. This control was subtle, woven into the fabric of our daily routines. When I suggested using a separate advisor for my inheritance, he gently steered me away, citing conflict of interest and the absolute necessity of having one unified financial front. He slowly, almost imperceptibly, disconnected me from my closest friends who might have questioned his methods, painting them as overly critical or negative influences. The facade was so thick, so seamlessly constructed, that questioning it felt like treason against our shared reality. But holding the loan document, I finally saw the truth. Every unified front he built was simply a wall intended to trap me inside his manipulation, ensuring he could move his pieces freely while I remained blindfolded. The discovery was purely accidental, a cruel joke played by fate's misplaced paperwork. Marcus's lawyer had dropped off a thick file of irrelevant tax documents for Marcus to sign before a scheduled trip. Marcus, in his usual rush, had instructed me to put the whole folder on his desk, but as I stacked the papers, a thin, crisply folded document slipped out and landed face up on the polished mahogany floor. It was clearly not a tax form. The bank's letterhead, the astronomical principal sum, the detailed description of the collateral, our house, all screamed danger. My heart didn't race, it felt heavy and cold, sinking into my stomach. I didn't immediately call Marcus. Instead, I called the bank directly, using the official reference numbers listed on the page. The woman in the loan department, polite and utterly oblivious to the earthquake she was causing, confirmed the details, including the specific date the funds were dispersed and the name listed on the account, Marcus and Elara Thorne. When I questioned the signature, she stated calmly that the original documents, signed in front of a notary, were filed, but that they would require a formal subpoena to view them. That was all the confirmation I needed. A single piece of paper, innocently displaced, had ripped open the meticulously constructed roof of my life, exposing the dark, empty void inside. It wasn't just money he'd stolen, it was the entire foundation of mutual security and shared vulnerability that defines a true partnership. My first instinct was primal, to gather every sharp object in the house, wait for him to walk through the door, and watch the manufactured composure drain from his face as I presented the evidence. But the deeper I sank into the reality of the betrayal, the more that frantic urge for revenge subsided, replaced by an unnerving, icy clarity. I realized that a confrontation fueled by rage would simply feed his game. He would deploy his usual weapons: deflection, denial, tears, gaslighting, promises of immediate repair. He would turn my justifiable fury into female hysteria, making the divorce, when it inevitably came, look like my emotional failure, not his calculated financial crime. I couldn't afford that narrative. I couldn't afford to waste my remaining emotional energy on theatrical justice. What I needed was not a loud victory, but a silent, clean excision. The marriage was already dead, killed by his dishonesty. My task now was not to resurrect it or mourn it publicly, but to handle the funeral with dignity and ensure I got out with my sanity intact. I spent the next 48 hours in silence, pretending everything was normal. I cooked his favorite meal, asked about his day, and smiled when he kissed me goodnight. All the while, I was drafting a blueprint for my escape, meticulously copying the documents, consulting discreet legal counsel, and planning the tactical withdrawal of my life. My peace depended on the quiet efficiency of my exit. 2 days later, I staged the encounter in the living room, late on a Tuesday night. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I simply waited until he settled in his leather armchair, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking satisfied after a hard day. I walked over to the mantelpiece, picked up the folded loan agreement I had placed there, and laid it neatly on the arm of his chair, sliding it close enough for the notary's seal to catch the lamplight. "Marcus," I said, my voice startlingly level, "we need to talk about this." His reaction was instantaneous and telling. Not confusion, but a flash of pure panic, followed immediately by the practiced mask of indignation. "What is this, Elara? Why are you going through my private papers?" He tried to snatch it away, but I held the edge firm. "It's not private, Marcus. It's our house. It's my inheritance. And that's not my signature." The manipulation started immediately. It was an urgent opportunity. I signed for both of us to expedite the process, saving us weeks. I was protecting us. He was sweating now, eyes darting. He tried to pivot to my supposed lack of faith, painting himself as the misunderstood genius taking risks for our future. He even attempted a sudden surge of physical affection, reaching for my hand, a gesture that now felt profoundly sickening. I recoiled. The betrayal of the money was awful, but the audacity of his continuing lies was the true fatal blow. When you realize the person you love values an elaborate lie more than they value your shared reality, what do you do? Do you fight until the bitter, exhausting end, or do you simply recognize that the fight itself costs more than the object you are fighting for? If you've ever had to choose peace over proof, what was the moment that finally tipped the scales for you? Please share your story in the comments below. His attempts to save face continued, escalating from frantic excuses to veiled threats about how messy a divorce could be. But I was already gone, emotionally speaking. The true extent of his long game of betrayal began to surface as I started pulling back the layers. He hadn't just forged one signature, he had systematically orchestrated their entire financial life to ensure he maintained absolute control. Over the years, he had insisted on handling all mail regarding the property taxes and mortgage, intercepting any documents that might reveal the leverage he was taking. I remembered specific moments, The time I lost my driver's license and the 3 weeks it took to get a replacement, only for him to mysteriously find the old one tucked into a book, after I had already ordered the new one. Now I realized he hadn't found it, he had hidden it until he had finished using my identity. The slow, creeping realization of how thoroughly he had engineered my isolation and dependence was more painful than the loss of the money. He hadn't just been unfaithful, he had spent years constructing a relationship where I was the primary subject of his fraud. The love I felt wasn't reciprocated, it was capitalized upon. This wasn't a marriage that failed, it was a carefully plotted scheme that finally ran out of road. Every shared memory, every comforting word, was retroactively tainted, revealing the cold, transactional nature of his affection. The morning after the confrontation, I woke up with the kind of clarity that follows a fever breaking. I looked at the man sleeping next to me, or rather, the shell of the man I thought I knew, and the overwhelming desire for peace washed over me. Forgiveness, I understood then, is not a gift you give to the betrayer, it is a weight you choose to lift from your own shoulders. But Marcus wasn't just remorseful, he was structurally incapable of honesty. Forgiving him would mean accepting a cycle of future deceit and having to constantly police my own life just to survive next to him. That wasn't freedom, that was a life sentence of vigilance. I chose peace. Peace, for me, meant removing myself from his narrative entirely. It meant choosing the difficult, temporary discomfort of divorce and financial restructuring over the slow, poisonous decay of staying married to a lie. I realized that fighting for justice, in the traditional sense, hiring the most aggressive lawyers, dragging his name through the mud, exposing him to everyone, would only tie my energy and emotional future to his toxicity for years. I needed to cut the cord, clean and fast. The marriage had to die so that I could live, unburdened by the obligation to fight a ghost who lived next door. My withdrawal became a masterpiece of controlled silence. While Marcus was frantically calling his lawyer and trying to backtrack, promising to sell assets, pay back the loan, and declaring undying love, I was systematically dismantling our shared life from the inside out. I opened new bank accounts in a city several states away, redirecting my professional payments there. I had copied every single relevant document and stored them in a safe deposit box known only to me and my lawyer. I had quietly, over the course of a week, begun transferring smaller, non-monetary valuables, family heirlooms, specific pieces of art, to a rental storage unit. I maintained the facade of being willing to work things out, letting him believe he was still in control of the situation, that I was simply wounded and needing time to cool down. This quiet, strategic planning was the ultimate act of self-preservation. I wasn't seeking revenge, I was seeking structural separation. Every move was calculated to minimize conflict and maximize my future independence. The irony was palpable. In the final days of our marriage, our communication was better than it had been in years, simply because I was pretending to listen and he was desperately pretending to be trustworthy. The final conversation took place not over dinner, but standing in the hallway, moments before he was leaving for a supposed business trip he had planned to escape the heat. I held a thick manila envelope. "Marcus," I said, "you don't need to worry about coming back early. This is it." I handed him the envelope containing the divorce petition, already filed. He stared at the documents, his face shifting instantly from practiced exhaustion to sheer, unadulterated panic. He didn't erupt in anger, but in a kind of desperate, theatrical whimpering. "Elara, please. We can fix this. Don't do this to us. Don't ruin everything we built." I finally spoke the truth, calm and cold as granite. "We didn't build anything, Marcus. You built a cage, and I was foolish enough to move in. The marriage didn't die because of the second mortgage. The marriage died years ago, slowly, every time you looked me in the eye and lied. You lost me not when you stole the money, but when you forfeited my respect. He continued pleading, trying to argue the legal points, the asset division, the cost. I stopped him. I don't care about winning the fight, Marcus. I just need to be free of fighting you. You can have the house, you can have the debt. I've already taken the only thing that truly matters, my peace. I watched him crumple, not because he was heartbroken, but because his grand plan had been successfully bypassed by a woman he thought he had completely controlled. Then I walked away, not looking back at the ruins. It's been 18 months since I walked out of that life. The divorce was quiet, fast, and expensive on my end, but worth every cent. I relocated, started a new firm, and built a life where every brick, every financial decision, every partnership, is utterly transparent and solely mine. There are still moments of deep sadness, realizing that the dream I pursued for a decade was a phantom, but those moments are overshadowed by a profound lightness. The choice to walk away from the fight, to prioritize internal tranquility over external vindication, was the hardest and most necessary decision I have ever made. Forgiveness often requires the betrayer to be worthy of grace, but when they are not, self-preservation becomes the only moral imperative. I chose peace over the endless war of trying to fix a man who was inherently broken. That peace is the most powerful revenge of all. It's the silence that remains after the detonation, allowing life to finally grow again. Thanks everyone for watching. If you liked this, please subscribe to the channel Femme Fatale Files, leave a like, and write in the comments which country you are from. Stay tuned, there will be a new story tomorrow.